Hey everybody, Mark Masters. It's Monday. That means it's time for Always Bookin Comedy. Guest is messaged me nicely and said they were running late. So let's do a little one-on-one time here. What's new in my world? I just went to Vermont. I did the Vermont Comedy Festival. I kissed an alpaca. That was pretty fun. And or the alpaca tried to kiss me and did some comedy. It was a fun festival all over the place in Vermont. I recommend it. I liked the networking. I got to meet a lot of great comedians. I did a couple spots, and somebody booked me to headline a show in Maine, which I've never been to. So now I'm working on booking out some dates around that. So I'll go back to New England next year. That's pretty exciting. What else has been going on recently? All kinds of venue drama with the shows I run, booking drama with the people that I'm booking. A lot of crazy December and January. Hey, Mark in Carolina. If you missed the very beginning, we're killing time for a couple minutes until the guest gets on. So if you have any questions, shout them out. Yeah, it's hard being a show booker sometimes. It's not always like it's great when ticket sales are good and it's fun and everybody's having a good time. I had a bunch of like over the weekend, I had a bunch of refund requests and transfer, like, oh, I bought the ticket to the wrong show, and that stuff just takes time. And then getting shows online, new shows. I did a bunch of that today, and you got to put it all over the internet. You got to get it on your website. You got to get it on the ticketing site. You got to get it on some local calendar site. I had to check in with the newspaper up in the mountains to see if they were going to run a story about the shows this Wednesday, Thursday. So worked on that. I just had like today was a crazy day. I had such a long to-do list, and I still have so many things to do. And I bought here's a little gripe. Little gripe. Very excited. I bought a Bose S1, which is a kind of fancy small speaker. I'm going to use it as a satellite speaker in my Eagle, Colorado pop-up Vail comedy shows as a to augment the tower that we have, because when we get like 90, 100 people in there, you got to crank the front speaker really loud, and it's very close to the audience. So having a satellite speaker towards the rear of the room will be helpful. What I'm annoyed about is I didn't realize there was a Bose S1 and a Bose S1 Plus. It's just a plus sign. You can barely tell the difference. And I bought an accessory that works with the Plus, but not the regular one. And then I went to look, how much is the Plus? And then I found out that they dropped the price of the S1 probably the day after I ordered it. So now I got to contact Bose, and I'd like to trade them out, but I imagine I'm going to have to ship it back, and it's going to cost me like $50 to ship it. So I don't know if that's going to make any sense. So if anyone wants a Bose S1, I'd be willing to sell it. That might make more sense here in Denver. Here we go. Let's go with a question. Oof. Well, so what do you do when somebody reneges on a deal? Now this applies to comedians and venues. It's tough. It's tough. Like I want to be friendly and a good partner to anybody I work with, an artist or a business that I'm collaborating with, be they a sponsor or a venue. And essentially, this isn't necessarily the case here, but in the worst case scenario, a party is dishonest with you. They say one thing and then they end up doing something else. And the problem with that is the trust is broken. I can be, you can't get your reputation back. So I take it very seriously that artists, when asked about me, will basically give me good reputational credit that I'm honest. I pay the way I say I'll pay, when I'll pay, how much I'm going to pay. That shows are what they are. I've heard stories before of comics being told there's going to be hundreds of people and there's like 4 people and they were counting on merch sales. So I try and be the best actor possible in every relationship, but you can't always count on other people. I think like I kind of draw a lesson from comedy. Like it hurts. It hurts when people are dishonest with you or change things, but you got to just, there's a lot of hurt in comedy. There's a lot of failure, a lot of rejection. And I would lump this into that category. You got to just kind of like, you can't dwell on it. You got to just keep moving forward. So, you try and patch things up best you can. And if there's an option, maybe you find somebody else in the future. If once somebody is dishonest once, you can't really count on them not to be dishonest again in the future. Let's see. Yeah. I mean, well, I don't want to get into specifics, but everybody's got their side of the story, and it's a handshake agreement or a contract was the question. I mean, it's a handshake plus written stuff. Like, are we going to do a show on this date? Yes. Somebody puts it on their online calendar, and then later is like, you know what, we don't want to do that because we can make more money with something else. And I've had that situation actually where it was handled better by the other party. That happened pretty recently, actually. On my tour of the Southeast, one of the venues had to change something with me because they got a holiday party booking they knew was going to make them a lot more money than my comedy show. And they reached out ahead of time and they said, look, this is the situation. This is what we want to do. Here are a couple options. Like, we can cancel the show. We can move the show earlier. We can move it to a different day, which wasn't an option for me in that situation. But yeah. Okay. The other guest should be here by now. And I'm wondering if he's going to make it. We'll, let's see. I do have his number. Let's see. How much longer? Let's see. I will talk to you guys some more about booking my own stuff. I'm going to look at my my little calendar here. And here's something fun. So I booked the main headlining stuff. And now I'm trying to book, there we go. Look at that. All right, we can stop that. All right, you guys heard enough from me. We got Lucas Larson here from San Francisco. How are you, Lucas?
Hi, Mark. Doing pretty good. Apologies. Was just running a little late from the day job.
Okay, no worries. We got 22 minutes. We'll fire through.
That's good.
Let's start with how you got started in comedy and stuff. Nice mic, by the way. Awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, so I was into music and was a drummer in a band, and doing music is a real team sport, and you're trying to coordinate 3 or 4 other people's schedules. And then read a Rolling Stones article about stand-up comedy and like common personality traits for stand-up comedians, and article just sort of clicked and was at an open mic like a week later.
Like, oh, I can do this without this baggage. This is great.
Yeah.
I've heard that story many a time. Travel is easier. All kinds of things.
Yeah.
Easier. Do you still do music?
Like for like have a podcast that did some music for that, but like definitely not to the same level that I was doing.
Okay. And are you glad you switched? Like you read this Promised Land in Rolling Stone and you went to an open mic. Did it feel like what you were reading in the beginning, or does it today?
Yeah. Like I'm really glad I switched. So I think the most unique thing about comedy is that you can get immediate feedback, where music, it's a lot of like practicing by yourself or like hiding in your like bedroom and like doing electronic beats, or like, and then you release it into the world weeks or months or years later and you're like, I hope people like this.
Yeah. That's wild. So how long ago was it that you made this switch?
Um, right around 2018, I think.
Okay, so a couple years, then the pandemic, year or two since then.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Okay.
I moved to San Francisco right before the pandemic, and that was pretty rough because like new scene plus like San Francisco actually enforcing the pandemic.
Yeah. Where did you start?
I started in Boulder, so
Oh, I'm not. You must have told me that at one point, but I had forgotten that.
oh yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to school there and started in Boulder to Bias Livingston, had a few open mics going and
Yeah.
happened to stumble into one of those.
Awesome. Awesome. So started in Colorado, went out to San Francisco. Uh, what any major differences you noticed when once you moved to San Francisco pre-pandemic between the scenes?
Yeah, at least the scenes when I was in Colorado versus like San Francisco post pandemic. San Francisco just brawls a lot more. So when I was in Colorado, most people were at least aware of everybody because there really seemed to be like Fort Collins people, like Denver people, a few Colorado Springs people, and then a few Boulder people. But like it wasn't to the size that um, San Francisco is. Like San Francisco just draws from like so many cities around it that it's hard to even like keep up with what people are doing.
Yeah. Um, Does that make it harder to get stage time?
So there's more stage time, but more competitive because you just have more people asking for the same spots.
Yeah. So okay, so that segues well into when did you start your first show and why?
Yeah, so I ran a couple shows in Colorado before I moved. So I ran two shows at the university, and I ran one open mic at the university to is built as like a student club to get people involved and to give like stage time to the Boulder comics because didn't have to be a student. And then I knew how to get student funding to put on shows in the theaters.
Okay.
And if I was able to get funding from the school I'm paying a bunch of money to, then I'll bring some cool comedians to campus.
Did you have any big wins? Anybody fancy you were able to bring?
The biggest headliner was Tig Notaro. And
Wow.
yeah, so I was really happy to get her to campus. And yeah,
Did
so
did she come out just for your show, or was it the kind of thing where you saw she was coming out and added on something?
no, it came out just for the show.
Wow.
And that unfortunately was close to like only students because
Oh,
that was like requirement of the funding. And then want, um, Tig didn't want like the community there as well.
ah, got it. Be, do you know why? Is that because it like competes with ticket sales or?
Yeah, um, like I can only hypothesize, but I imagine came back to the market or was planning on coming back to the market. This was sort of before the pandemic, so I don't know if she ever made it back
Right.
within a short time,
Sure.
but didn't want to like cannibalize the sales and like where she would like advertise it on her website and like add it as part of a tour where the campus show is more of like a one-off.
Did you draw a decent audience for that?
Yeah. So I was in a ballroom and I think we had about 450
Wow.
students there. So
And did you host it or get up on stage?
that was definitely a hope of it, but was exclusively TIG.
Yeah, actually, I heard that recently. She's done a couple of shows in Colorado, and she did them just all herself. No opener, nothing.
Yeah. Like he said, the only person that could have hosted or opened would have been Nancy Norton since they
Okay.
know each other.
Yeah,
But Nancy was booked that night.
sure.
I think he was off like winning the Boston Comedy Festival or something.
Nancy's the best. That's great.
Yeah.
Everybody look up Nancy Norton, nancynorton.tv online.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
cool. Well, that's funny. That's kind of ironic because a lot of, college comedy producers, they do it so they can perform with these famous comedians, right? And you just unluckily picked one that doesn't have openers, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I think most people get into producing to like create like stage time for themselves. Like some people ultimately end up focusing exclusively on producing, but at least the vast majority of people that I've seen are also creating their own opportunities.
Yeah. How long, once you came out to San Francisco, did you like right away try and start a show, or what was your strategy with that?
No, so with the pandemic, just had
Oh,
to like lay low and like so I moved out like 3 months before the pandemic. So I was just trying to like meet comedians because I didn't want to start a show not like knowing the scene or knowing who to book.
yeah.
And then after the pandemic, then I started reaching out to venues and like there's a lot of spaces in San Francisco, but it can be a hard sell to have them do a comedy show. So
Yeah. So then the pandemic happens, pandemic ends. Then did you hit the ground running, or did you feel like you needed to suss out the scene because it maybe changed or turned over before you would know who to book?
no, so then I hit the ground running.
Okay.
Like so during the pandemic, there were like a few weird one-off things like shows in parks that like normally the heavy hitters of the scene wouldn't want to do.
Mhm.
But during the pandemic, when the only thing happening is shows in parks, then like whoever's doing the show in the park is probably the funniest comedian in the scene.
Why, why do you think that is?
um, just like before the pandemic, the like heavy hitters of the scenes were just getting like the best spots, and but like when all the best spots disappeared, then like comedians are just like jonesing for any stage time. And like a show in a park during the day is normally like a terrible show, but it's probably better than a Zoom show. So,
Sure. So it was like,
um,
are you saying like it was like the emperor has no clothes once the audiences disappeared? The best comedians were kind of exposed as relying on hot audiences and the people who are working very hard.
no,
Those.
like I think the like I don't think anyone was exposed. I think they just were willing to take the gigs that they would normally pass up.
Oh, even the top comedians.
Yeah, the top
Oh, okay.
comedians
Okay.
would take the gigs that like they would normally pass up for a different booking.
Got it. Got it. So then the pandemic ends and things open, and so did you start a show?
Yeah. So after the pandemic, then was reaching out to a lot of venues, and I happened to connect with the Speakeasy in San Francisco, and they were able to have us run a few shows there, and like all the shows went really well, I thought, but like ultimately they didn't have realistic expectations. So I'm looking for a new venue.
Oh, bummer. Here's a question from online. Can you talk about an example of how you approached a venue to get a show that you were able to book for at least a few months? That seems to fit perfectly this. So how did you approach the speakeasy?
Yeah. So I like to physically go to locations and like see if it would be a good physical space for comedy. And then what I've had the most success with is reaching out via email or Instagram, because if they're working, so like when I was in Colorado and approached a few venues and learned a few mistakes, like if they're working and you're just like show up to the bar, at least for me, it didn't work for me to just be like, hey, are you the owner or do you want to do comedy?
Yeah.
Where
They're
with
like, quit
the,
bothering me.
yeah, exactly. They're like, I have drinks to serve and whatnot. So with the email, able to like say who I am, if like had run any previous shows, then I started including that in my email. And like if the previous shows would like do a reference, then I'd be like, can reach out to them as well. And then send out a bunch of emails, and definitely not going to hear back on all of them. And like the really promising physical spots, I will follow up with every like 4 to 6 weeks if they like don't respond, and just keep looking for spots and keep sending emails. And that's how I've been able to book most of the physical spots.
Nice. Can you would you be comfortable talking about a little bit about how the relationship unraveled with that venue? I think that's kind of
Yeah.
interesting.
So like try to be transparent from the beginning of like let's try a 3 show run, and could definitely like you want advertising in the venue because to like let the regulars know that like what's happening.
Hmm.
And it was a Wednesday night, and for all 3 shows it was pretty full, and it's a 90-minute show, and people are probably ordering like 1 or 2 drinks. But on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, they have DJs, and it's like a really fun crowd that drinks heavily.
Yeah.
So, like, a comedy show is just not going to be able to compete with a packed
Yeah.
out DJ room. And,
Sure.
like, they didn't want to hang up posters because it would, like, is definitely a nicer venue, and posters give off more of a like dive bar vibe.
Yeah.
And so ultimately they wanted like more drinks or just like more revenue, and the show definitely had potential to grow, but it started off pretty well. So it like physical space, it wasn't gonna be able to like triple in sales.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. That's tricky. I've run some shows in rock venues, and for sure, just the money that the venue is making is way less in comedy than at a rock show. Because at a rock show, one, you can fit more people in the space because everybody's standing instead of sitting,
Yep.
and two, people have no problem walking over to the bar in the middle of a song. But during a comedy show, they kind of get their drinks before and they get their drinks after the show. But they're for an hour and a half, they're not ordering really
Yeah,
anything.
yeah, exactly. And then lots of concerts are like 2.5 or 3 hours even. So
Yeah, it's
just
another.
like different atmosphere. Like with the DJ plays all night. So
Yeah. Okay, we got another question from online. Seats, lighting, sound, important in a physical space. Lucas Larson, what do you consider to be most important when setting up a comedy show?
yeah, so I think um the most important things I'm looking for is the ceilings and how like where the seats would be arranged compared to where the comedians would be performing. So lots of venues don't have like a physical stage, and if it does have a physical stage and the stage is like a rock concert where it's like 6 feet off the ground, then lots of times that's not ideal for comedy.
Right.
And then looking for ideally low venues and something that just like feels packed in when a lot of people are there, because then if you have a lot of people, the laughs will reverberate and it'll be amazing. But if it's still has that feeling, even if you have like 10 or 15 people there, then it can be a pretty solid show as well.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Have you done much travel to perform outside of Colorado and California?
Yeah. So I've traveled the States some, but my wife is actually European and we've been doing long distance our whole relationship. And so I performed a lot in Europe.
Huh.
Some of the bigger like places I perform most frequently in Europe are Barcelona and then Aarhus, which is the second largest city in Denmark.
Huh. English language
Yeah,
shows
all
for
English.
expats mostly?
Yeah, in Barcelona, it's mostly expats. In Aarhus, it um, is, as far as I can tell, it's more Europeans, but like pretty much all Danes speak English. But
Okay.
um, those shows seem to be Europeans from all over.
Any challenges with performing to those audiences?
Um, Probably the most memorable set is I was doing a set in Denmark, and like the first three comedians all go up, and the host goes up, and they're all doing it in Danish. They're like, "Now you can do English." I'm like, "I think you guys are just messing with me," and I took like a 2-hour train ride to this town, and I'm like, "This isn't going to go well." But yeah, like that went surprisingly well. There were a few older audience members that didn't have like a firm grasp of English, but generally speaking, everyone was on board.
Nice. How do you know in that situation if you're repeating material or premises from other comics?
Oh, no idea. like, like could have, yeah, could have been telling like essentially repeat joke, and I would have no idea.
Yeah. Oh, that's wild. That's pretty funny. Is there anything else notably different between comedy in America and comedy in Europe?
um, there's more festivals in Europe that are for extended amounts of time, and people do go and do straight stand up, but lots of times the stand up is around a theme and it like borderlines on a one man show.
Okay.
So like Fringe Festival in Edinburgh was like is the biggest Fringe festival in the world, and they do have a few like straight stand up sets, but most of them have a theme or like, for lack of a better term, a lesson like baked
Yeah.
into the comedy.
Right. Yeah. All right, we got to start landing this plane. Do you have a show today in San Francisco?
um
Are you working on it? Give
I,
us
I
the
I
skinny.
sent an email yesterday for
Okay.
a really hot physical space that I was able to check out. So
Okay.
fingers crossed on that. And
Nice.
then always looking for new spots
What,
and like
what-
hopefully have something up and running um, in January or February would be the ideal scenario.
nice. What's your longest tenured show to date? Your last one went 3 months, or was it 3 months or 3 weeks?
That was 6 weeks
Oh, okay.
because it was every other week. And
Okay.
then I did two shows, two open mics in Boulder that were not related to the campus. And the longest one there went like 18 months. And that
Wow.
only ended
Nice.
because I moved.
Yeah, that's great. And running an open mic, man, what a hero to do that. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Like I think everyone should do it to start, but at this point, it would take a lot of convincing. That's why I'm trying to do
sure.
the showcases.
Yeah. Well, I hope in 2024 you get a show to run much longer than 6 weeks. I think you got it in you. I hope you get to keep doing fun travel comedy. That's pretty amazing to go to Spain and Denmark and tell jokes in those places. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Anything you want to close with? How can people find you?
Yeah. So I'm L squared comedy on all the social media and actually have a podcast called Cliff Notes Continued, and the first episode is dropping tomorrow.
Whoa. Give us the pitch, the elevator pitch.
We read Cliff Notes of a book, and then we improvise the story that would follow
Like the
the Cliff
sequel?
Notes. Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Can you tell us what the first story is?
Yeah, so the first story we read was The Last Battle, which is the last book on the Chronicles of Narnia series.
Oh yeah, okay.
And then we improvised a wild tale
Wow.
after that.
Wild. That is ambitious because that's like a 7 novel series or something like that.
Oh
Six,
yeah.
7? I don't know.
Yeah,
Great
it's
one.
long, but luckily
It's
with the Cliff Notes, we can read it in a few paragraphs.
nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Tune in next Monday. We got another great guest on Always Booking Comedy. Lucas, you're the best. Stick around. I want to chat with you. And we're saying goodbye for now.